was around late 1976, perhaps to facilitate matters. Do you recall for how long you worked as a guard outside of the S21 premises before you became an interrogator?
As I said that I am not so clear about the time because things have happened a long time ago.
Very well. When you became an interrogator, did you have the choice to refuse that assignment?
At that time, I had no rights to reject the assignment. Anyone who rejected or refused to do the task assigned to them, they would be alleged of being enemy of the revolution. So no one dared to refuse or to reject the assignment.
Et vous parlez d'ennemis de la Révolution. Quel était le sort qui était...
You talked of the enemies of the revolution. What was the fate reserved for enemies of the revolution under the particular system in place at S21?
I cannot fully understand your question.
Vous avez dit que...
You stated that if you disobeyed instructions, you were considered as an enemy of the revolution. At S21, what happened to those who were considered as enemies of the revolution? Were they kept alive?
Thank you. President, Mr. Witness, please hold on. The floor is given to Antakuze.
Oui, Monsieur.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to object to the last question by the co-prosecutor. The first part is very good, but in the second part, he is trying to enhance the answer given by the witness by asking that question. Witness, my question was, what happened to the enemies of the revolution at S21? I am reformulating the question and withdrawing the last part of the question.
I also object to that question because it is asking for speculation. He was a guard. He gave a lot of evidence saying that he did not know what happened to the people in the truck exported out of the prison. When he was in an interrogator, he also...
President, there is no translation in Khmer. President, Ms. Counsel Victor Kope, please repeat your objection because a while ago there was no Khmer translation.
Yes, Mr. President, I object to this question because it is asking for speculation. As a guard, he clearly had no knowledge whatsoever what would happen to the prisoners being exported out. The same most likely applies to his function as an interrogator. It was outside the scope of his knowledge and his functioning. So the prosecutor is basically seeking the witness to have post-79 knowledge inserted into his answer.
Sorry, Counsel, I note that you yourself are speculating on whether the witness could know something, which is usually not the best basis for an objection against speculation.
Well, we've all read his previous evidence. We've all read the evidence of other S21 cadres. So it's not a speculation on my side.
Why did you say most likely?
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais...
Mr. President, I'd like to ask this question because a few moments ago, the witness said that people were executed outside of the perimeter of S21 and buried, and that the stench was nauseating. So I believe that the witness is aware of all what happened, and I have therefore laid the foundation for my question, and he should know what happened to the enemies of the revolution who were detained at S21. So I would like the witness to answer my question.
The chamber overruled the objection by defense counsel Victor Kope. The co-prosecutor can proceed with this question. I instruct the witness to answer the question posed to you by the co-prosecutor if you can still remember it. Witness, yes, I can answer it. The question about the enemy of the revolution. The enemy of the revolution referred to those who did not follow or work for the revolution. So those people were considered as enemy of the revolution.
Et donc la question était de savoir que le...
And my question, therefore, is what happened to them? What became of them, particularly at S21?
When anyone refused or rejected the assignment, that particular person will face the bad fate.
Monsieur le témoin, nous n'avons pas...
Witness, we do not have a lot of time. Can you be more specific? What do you mean by what you have just stated, that their fate was death?
Their fate came to an end. It means that person would be arrested and imprisoned and killed. So that's why when I was assigned to join the interrogation unit, I joined it because I needed to follow the order in order to survive. For anyone who refused or did not follow the instruction, that particular person was arrested, imprisoned, and later on executed.
Bien, dans quel groupe...
Very well. In which group of interrogators were you assigned to work in? There were several groups, and you can tell us which were those groups and what were the specific duties of your group in relation to the other groups.
When I was in the interrogation unit, I was in the chewing unit.
Quels étaient les noms des autres groupes?
What were the other groups called, apart from the chewing group?
Beside the chewing unit, there were other two units called the cool unit and the hot units. After prisoners were interrogated exhaustively, and then the prisoner was sent to the chewing unit.
Lorsque vous receviez...
When you received prisoners, have they already been interrogated by the other groups in all cases? Or were they interrogated directly by your group without having gone through the other two groups?
For the prisoners I interrogated at that time were mostly those who were already tortured exhaustively, and they were sent to my unit so that we would shoot for more information. There were only few cases where new prisoners were sent to my unit.
Pourriez-vous nous dire à la Chambre,
Can you tell us, or tell the chamber, what the technique referred to as chewing consisted of? You said you often receive prisoners who had already been tortured. What did the chewing group have to do to obtain information from those prisoners?
The so-called chewing unit, in simple terms, it means we asked for very detailed answers until we fully get or obtain the full answer.
lorsque vous êtes devenu interrogateur,
When you became an interrogator, how did you learn to do your duties, to carry out your duties and responsibilities? Was it by observing interrogation sessions, or you attended some other kinds of training sessions?
The first step, I observed the interrogation being practiced, being done by other interrogators. For example, how to handcuff, how to blindfold prisoners, how to torture prisoners, etc. After I gained the skill in all of this, and then I could proceed to bringing in prisoners for interrogation.
en plus de cette phase d'observation,
Apart from that observation phase, did you regularly receive training conducted by the officials of S21, notably Deutsch?
Later on, I received instruction and training. Every half month or 1 month, we were invited for a training session at Deutsch House about the various techniques that should be used for interrogation and torturing.
en dehors de ça,
Apart from that, did you also undergo training of a political nature conducted by Son Sen?
At one time, Son Sen came to train us at the political study session at Deutsch House.
lors de ces réunions formelles,
During those training sessions with Deutsch and also with Son Sen, did both Deutsch and Son Sen talk to you about the specific role of S21 and its significance to the country and the Kampuchea Communist Party?
At that time, I cannot recall it well, but what I can recall was that Deutsch and Son Sen said that S21 was the life of the country. So we had to work hard to search for the network or strings that the prisoners gave us in the answers.
Est-ce qu'ils vous ont dit
Did they tell you that S21 was an essential element in the country's security apparatus?
But
Yes, as I said earlier, S21 was the key of Cambodia.
Monsieur le Président, avec votre autorité,
Mr. President, with your leave, I would like to have screened a video clip from the film S21, The Khmer Rouge Killing Machine by Riti Pan, and its video E3/3924R. From 35 minutes 52 seconds to 36 minutes 14 seconds. This is an extract of the film in which the witness talks about the importance of S21.
President, your request is granted. I instruct the audio unit to project the film on the screen as requested by the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Môn tí so mà thấy mỗi chia bé đông này phải tới chiết, thấy coi chia từ so trung ở rừng mom là, chẳng dừng lại chuyện tay sẽ đâm bóc phạ, chẳng trong miền chúng họ đại khát, khơi khmang, cứ có mọi miền chất tệ tươi ngồi khmang, trong đại khát ngồi khmang, cuộc bom ôn mai âu, trôi màu nông nắng gỗ, chạy.
dans cet extrait vidéo,
In this video clip, Mr. Witness, you state that as an interrogator and worker at S21, the right hand of the party, can you specify in what way you were the right hand of the party?
Và đại sẽ đâm là bác.
The right hand of the party meant that whatever assignment the party gave to us, we must implement it. We must implement it because the party had trust and confidence in us.
est-ce que Son Sen et Deutsch
Did Son Sen and Deutsch ever tell you that by doing your work and by being determined, you were defending the interests of the party?
Và chỉ rơi
They frequently instructed us to follow the order of the party.
Je me voudrais lire également.
I would like to read an extract of a document which is on record E3/863. It is, or rather E3/833. It is the notebook of Nai, one of the guards at S21, 00731, in English 00242263, and in Khmer 0007791, and it is dated the 25th of July 1978. And this is what is written in this notebook by an interrogator at S21, and I quote, free translation: the elimination of traitors certainly transforms the movement by making it take a leap forward, a great leap forward, by transforming a weak revolution into a powerful movement. In light of this, we are the political police, and we must endeavor to accomplish our task by adhering to this movement and drafting documents, end of quote. Free translation. Did you hear Son Sen? Deutsch, Mamnai alias Cham, and other cadres at S21 pride themselves on the fact that eliminating the traitors assisted the revolution in making a leap forward, or taking a leap forward.
Yes, I heard about that many times. They instructed us to work hard and to be determined in order to achieve what they said, democracy.
Correction by the interpreters, the reference for the English was 00077795. In the extract I read, they talk of political police. Were you considered as the political police of the country in light of what I've read out to you?
At that time, I was considered as a security guard, not a policeman.
Je comprends ce que vous faisiez en tant
I do understand what you did as a guard. How about what you did as an interrogator? In light of the fact that you said that you had to identify networks of traitors, did you use that term, political police, to characterize those who worked as interrogators to bring to light the traitors?
Yes.
Parmi ces réseaux, quels étaient
Among those networks, which ones did you try to identify during the interrogations of prisoners? Which were the principal networks that you were specifically assigned to identify or instructed to identify?
They require us not to target or identify any special network. There were many networks, including CIA, KGB, or something else. So it depended on which network that the prisoners gave to us.
en plus de la CIA et du KGB?
Apart from the CIA and the KGB, you also had the network of Vietnamese who guzzled up territory.
Yes, among the prisoners who confessed, some of them were network of the UN, some were networks of the Khmer So or Khmer Serai or other networks.
Lors de ces sessions de formation,
During those training sessions or those meetings, which were held twice a month or once a month, did Deutsch ever tell you who were his immediate superiors, to whom he reported, or to whom he was accountable?
បាទ
He never told us the specific names of his superiors. He simply referred to those superiors as brother number 1, brother number 2.
et qu'a-t-il dit à propos des frères?
And what did he say regarding brothers number 1 and 2? Did he talk about them often? If yes, what did he tell you about them?
បាទនិយាយ
Talking about brother number 1 and 2, he talked about the reports that he sent to the two brothers, whether the two brothers accepted it or rejected it. So he raised this matter during the meeting in regards to whether the reports sent to the superior were accepted by brother number 1 and 2 or not.
Et
did he speak about sending reports to brother 1 and brother number 2 during the entire period when you were an interrogator, or at a specific period?
Yes, he said about that. Sometimes that he reported to brother number 1 and brother number 2, but he did not tell us the names of the two brothers.
And what was Sun Sen's status? You said that he came at least once to attend a political training session. Was there a link or hierarchical relation, rather, between Sun Sen and Doik?
I met Sun Sen when he came to train us during the political study session near Dutch House. He was the commander-in-chief of the army.
Did Doik ever mention brother number 2 as an example? As he had authorized the arrest of his nephew Sat, S-A-T.
President Copper, you can proceed now.
I object to this question. The witness has just said that he doesn't know who brother number 1 and brother number 2 are, and therefore he's also not in a position to say who the cousins or nephews or whoever of brothers number 1 and 2 are. I know there is evidence from Duik as to who brothers number 1 and 2 might be. Whether that is in fact the case, especially in the light of Sun Sen, is another matter. But since he doesn't know who brothers number 2 and 1 are, he cannot answer any questions as to nephews.
Je m'oppose.
I object to this objection, Mr. President. Maybe it's not necessary to use the nephew's name well, then I will simply rephrase the question by asking if Duik ever mentioned brother number 2 as an example for having arrested or authorized the arrest of one of his nephews, whomever he was.
I have never heard of that term or word. It is not within the realm of my business that I had to know.
At the time when Son Sen came at least once to S21, what was his name? What was his revolutionary name? How was he called? How did Duik call him?
I did not know how Duke addressed those people. He did not address those people by real or actual names, and usually Duke addressed any other people by comrade, for example, Comrade Sun Sen.
Did Duik ever tell you from which echelon the orders came in order to arrest the division leaders, in the zone leaders, or ministers who were working? Did Duik ever speak to you about which echelon the orders came from when this type of arrests occurred?
But
It is beyond my knowledge.
Alors, vous avez parlé.
Well, you spoke about Sun Sin. Did he come once or several times?
I saw him only once when he came to spoke during the training session. Correction from the interpreter, during the time that he came to address the crowd in the political training session.
And this political or these political training sessions, did they take place in the context of a general annual assembly at S21, or were these separate events?
These sessions were held on separate occasions. It did not happen. They did not happen within the annual general assemblies or sessions at S21.
Est-ce que vous.
Do you remember how much time went by between the moment when you arrived S21 and the moment when you saw Sun Sen at this political training session? So, in other words, did this happen during the first or second or third year when you were there?
I cannot recall the year exactly. At that time, I did not pay attention to the date or the specific year when things happened. I was concerned that I would be arrested, and at the time I did not take note of the time and year that happened.
Est-ce
Maybe this will assist you if I give you some time pointers. Was this before the Great Vietnamese Offensive that took place at the end of 1977? Or was this after? Was it afterwards that you saw Son Sen?
It was before that great Vietnamese offensive, long before that time.
កំឡុងពេលហ្នឹងវា
During the time, the situation was chaotic within S-21, and almost all the interrogators had been arrested at the time, and after that Son Sen went to that location. So I cannot tell you for sure which year was it, which years it was.
bien, est-ce qu'il y a
Fine. Was there any specific form of discipline for interrogators? And can you also tell us what the objective was that you had to reach as an interrogator? What did you have to obtain from the prisoners?
Witness, could you repeat your question? It does not come clear to me.
Yes. Let me break up my question in two. So as an interrogator, when you had to interrogate a prisoner, what was the aim you had to reach? What was the final objective of that interrogation?
The purpose to interrogate prisoners was to obtain confession, and after the confession was obtained, that would be sent to the upper echelon.
Was it necessary to always obtain confessions, or was it acceptable to tell your superiors that you were not successful in obtaining confessions?
After the confession was obtained, I would forward the confession, or I would make a report to the superiors. And for those who did not, who was not able to obtain the confession, they were instructed to extract or to use further efforts so that confession would be obtained.
We will get back to the different methods later on. So, was it necessary to obtain a complete confession? And therefore, was it necessary to obtain the confessions without that the interrogated person dies, without seeing that person die?
The process of interrogation, some confession, the content of confession sometimes were not correct, but at the end we had to forward the confession up the line, and for the prisoners, I do not know whether they died after the interrogation, but sometimes they sustained wounds or injuries.
The question was, did you receive instructions regarding the fact that you had to keep the prisoners alive until they had completely confessed?
There is two. That was the instruction from the upper echelon that we had to do everything to keep prisoners alive so that we could obtain the confession. If they died, we would have no confession. Whatever we used or when we beat them, we were not required to beat them severely to avoid the death of those prisoners. And if a prisoner would have died, if the prisoner had died, we would have been imprisoned as well.
Est-ce que
Were you afraid when you were an interrogator that you would make mistakes in your job? Were you afraid of not performing well? Were you afraid of not obtaining the confessions that were requested from you? What was your state of mind?
In relation to the state of mine, I was so scared, particularly in relation to the process of the document and how to record the confession and also how to prevent the prisoners from dying. I was afraid that the prisoners would have died as of the result as a result of interrogation. Although I inflicted torture, the torture would usually be light.
I will get back to the interrogation techniques later, but before you spoke about the fact that at one point in time there were many interrogators who apparently had been arrested, I believe. So can you tell us why some of your colleagues were arrested? Did they commit offenses? Any specific offenses that justified their arrest?
Interrogators from my group consisted of 12 members and 30 people in total in the three groups. And from time to time, the interrogator disappeared, and only I remained. I was from a division 703, and later on the young children from the West were sent in to replace and to be in charge of that tasks.
Can you, however, provide us with examples? Examples of mistakes, if such mistakes occurred, as far as you know. Well, let me rephrase the question. As far as you know, were there any specific offenses that were held against the interrogators that led to their disappearances? If you know of any examples, could you please provide us with these?
Regarding offenses, there were no noticeable offenses. For example, Chom Korn and other interrogators, whom I cannot recall all their names, worked with me, and some of them had been arrested and sent to the special prisons to be interrogated, and they were covered with blankets to avoid people from seeing their faces. Usually their feet or legs would be seen. And usually these interrogators were arrested based on their network. For example, the leaders of specific groups were arrested. Later on, subordinates were also arrested. For instance, people from 703, including me, were arrested from time to time, and only I remained surviving after the 7th January.
Well, the prisoners you interrogated yourself, did they come from all of the units or zones or divisions or ministries across the country? Or were you only dealing with a certain kind of prisoners? That is to say, were you specialized in a specific region, or did you deal with all kinds of prisoners whom you had to interrogate?
For the prisoners who was sent to me to be interrogated, I do not know where they were from. They were in the general category. For example, combatants, chief of battalions and regiments were sent to me for interrogation.
Donc vous voulez dire quel...
So you're telling me that they came from all regions or all zones or all entities throughout the country. They could come from anywhere, in fact, in Cambodia. Did I understand you properly?
That is true.
Well, among the prisoners you interrogated upon orders from your superiors, did some or had some been arrested because their names had been mentioned in confessions that had been gathered at S21?
Could you repeat your question?
Fine. So you would interrogate prisoners. Did your superiors ever tell you, or did the prisoners ever tell you during the interrogations, that these people had been denounced as traitors by other prisoners at S21 who had been interrogated previously? In other words, when an S21 prisoner confessed and denounced accomplices, did you then sometimes have to interrogate one or several of these accomplices who had been denounced previously?
That case did happen. Arrests did happen from one to another instances, and prisoner usually implicated others in the confession, so we had to search for all those related people in the confessions.
Je vois qu'il me reste...
I see that I have about 5 or 6 minutes left. So then I might want to put a few questions to you during these minutes on the structure of S21. So aside from Doik, who was part of the senior cadres at S21, who was Doik's deputy, and who were the cadres in charge of the different units at S21?
The chief was Kankayeo alias Duich, and then Ho was after him. Ho was a deputy. I do not know his full name. And members was Paul, in charge of security guards. And Peng was also a member, responsible for internal security guards. Paul was in charge of guards at the outside the compound, but Peng was in charge of prisoners inside the compound, in charge of guards rather, inside the compound, and there were no others individuals within that structure.
Est-ce que le nom de Hui...
Does the name Hui, H-U-Y, and I'm speaking about Im Hui because there were two, it's Hui in fact. Does the name Him Hui ring a bell, and what was he in charge of?
Answer: yes, I know Him Hui. He was in charge of guards at the outside the compound.
Est-ce que c'était...
Was it Him Hui's unit that was in charge of leaving S21 to ferry the people who had been arrested in the S21 trucks and to bring them to the prison?
Yes, he was in charge of receiving prisoners coming into S21, so he was in charge of transporting prisoners in and out.
What was Mamnai alias Cham's role? C-H-A-N. Mamnai alias Chan. Correct the interpreter.
Momnai alias Yan, to my knowledge, although he was in that location, had no specific role or position. He was working with Kanki alias Duich. He was working as an assistant to Duich.
Est-ce que c'était l'assistant de...
Was he Duke's assistant regarding the interrogators unit?
Yes, regarding the interrogation unit.
And with regard to your successive chiefs within the chewing unit, could you please provide me with the names of the people who were your superiors? And can you please let me know if their names changed over time? And if you could give me the names of the people by starting with the first all the way into the person who was in charge of your unit when the Vietnamese arrived.
Let me tell you, after I worked at S21, and particularly when I was guarding outside, I was under Hui. And after I was reassigned to be part of interrogation units, Nguyen was the group chief of mine. And after his arrest, John came to that position. And after John, Tet was the chief of my group until the liberation of 7 January. And I, at the time, did not know where he fled to. President, well, it is now time for lunch break. The chamber will take lunch break from now until 1:30. Court officers, please find a proper waiting room for this witness during the lunch break, and please invite him together with the duty counsel into the courtroom in the afternoon. And security personnel are instructed to bring Kieu Sampon to the waiting room downstairs, and please have him returned into the courtroom before 1:30. The court is now in recess.